Wish I could be wrong half the time and still get paid? Man, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that one. Okay, maybe I wouldn't have that many nickels, but still, there's a pretty big difference between how well our forecasts do and how well a lot of people think our forecasts do. Pull up a chair, we're going to clear the air this week in Heather's Weather Wise. First of all, we get it right way more than half the time, and I'm not just saying that to be defensive. A couple of years ago, the National Weather Service did a study that showed, on average, meteorologists can get the high temperature forecast right to within 2.5 degrees. When it comes to precipitation, things are a little bit trickier, but a 24-hour precip versus no precip forecast is going to be right 82% of the time. Is it perfect? No, but not bad for predicting the future. I mean, think of your March Madness bracket from last year. All right, I'm done with the attitude. Let's talk science, because there's actually a couple big reasons that we'll never be able to 100% accurately predict the atmosphere every single day. The first one is something called chaos theory. The second reason is the fact that there's just not enough computer power in the world to do what we need. Now, both of those reasons go pretty deep into geek territory, but I'll skim the surface for you. In a nutshell, chaos theory says that any little change in whatever's going on right now could have big impacts down the line in the future. And of course, weather forecasting is all about looking into the future. But we start by looking at things like temperature, pressure, wind speed. We put all those variables that we call initial conditions into equations that look like this. I warned you, serious geekery here. We don't actually do the math ourselves, but those computer models that you hear so much about do. Here's an example of what one model might look like with chaos theory. Each one of these different lines represents a different temperature forecast. On to problem number 2, the issue of not having enough computing power. The supercomputers that run the American model that you hear so much about, they can do 8 quadrillion calculations per second. That's 12 zeros. Even with all of that, the American model can only analyze data on a grid with points spaced 13 kilometers apart. The model needs 4 of those points to see a weather feature. A little quick math shows that you can forget about any weather feature that's smaller than about 30 miles. That often means leaving out lake effect, which is important for us in Western New York. Now, there are models that do have a slightly higher resolution, and FutureLook is one of them. It has grid points spaced every 4 kilometers apart. Here's the thing though, it only runs out to 48 hours. It would take a lot more computer power to be able to extend that to a week or even more. The smaller the grid, the better the resolution. You want perfection? You basically need 0 space between those points. That's an infinite number of zeros after a decimal, and we just can't do that. All right, enough about those fancy models. They get enough of the spotlight these days. Ultimately, it's up to us as meteorologists to pick out the best model solution, but more importantly, to explain the forecast to you in a way that makes sense and describes where we're uncertain. Remember, we're on your side here. If you ever have a question about the forecast, we're always just a tweet or a Facebook message away. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Heather's Weather Wise. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next week with a new topic, but until then, remember, it's good to be a geek.